One thing that every Christian shares in common with every other Christian that has really walked on this planet is this, and that is every Christian has experienced hardships, difficulties, and sufferings. We live in a land that's been cursed by God, and by virtue of that curse, life is hard, it's sweaty, it's gritty, it's dangerous. We suffer at the hands of others. We suffer at the hands of nature, who brings catastrophe sometimes into our lives. We suffer at the hands of family members who sometimes hurt us and betray us and sin against us in very, very painful, hurtful, sad ways. And then we have experiences that also the evil one is able to bring infliction upon us as well. And but sometimes the difficulties that we face are little. Sometimes they're in the middle and they're medium. And sometimes there are those who suffer traumatic trauma sorts of sufferings and difficulties and hardships. Undoubtedly, there will be, I hope, I suspect, not hope, I suspect that there'll be many, many, many thousands of people who watch this video who are currently experiencing or having experienced a very deep, profound, traumatic event or series of events in their lives that still lingers to them like dust and dirt or sweat might linger to our hot bodies. It's just something that we just can't see. It seems to affect us each and every day. It's a common experience for Christians to suffer hardship and difficulties and pains and hurts and betrayals and such things. But we know and we've heard and we've read in the scriptures that God says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good to those who love God, that is Christians, and who are called according to his purpose, that is, they are Christians. So if you love God today and you're a Christian, and he has called you according to his purpose, and that means you're a Christian, then God has made a promise that everything that happens to us, good, bad, easy, hard, difficult, or traumatic, works together for our good. That's hard to believe, particularly when it's very, very painful, very, very difficult, and you've gone through very, very hurtful sorts of situations. And the question is, well, where is God, and what does that mean that he works everything together for good? What's that look like? What does that look like? Because on my scene, there are many, many people moving parts that are going around, and those parts reach out at times and hurt me, and they damage me, and they betray me, and they hurt me, and I don't see God, but He says everything works together for good, and I don't quite understand what that looks like. How does that work out? Can't see God working His hand of providence behind everything. So what I'd like to do today is just give you something that an illustration of this that I thought was very helpful in helping me to see what does it look like when God promises that everything is working for our good. And the illustration, or I'll call it an illustration, comes from this book, All Things for Good, which is written by Thomas Watson back in the 1600s. Strongly suggest you get this book. If it's been around that long and still in publication, you can be sure it's helped a lot of people and will probably help you too, because like every other Christian who's walked on this planet, they've suffered, had hardships and difficulties, and are wondering, how does God do all these things working together for our good? But here's what Thomas Watson wrote down on page 25, and I found this to be helpful to me, and I hope it'll be helpful to you as well. Listen to what he says. God has so tempered or orchestrated our trials and difficulties and hardships and sufferings. God has so tempered them that all work in a harmonious manner for the good of the universe, and particularly for the good of the Christian. He goes on to say this. I'm going to read this twice. Or as in a watch, and the watch that he's talking about is the watch that people used to wear or maybe have in their pockets, that used to have a minute hand and a second hand and an hour hand. We're going back a ways here, but he's using a watch as an illustration. Or as in a watch, the wheels seem to move contrary to one another, but all carry on the motions of the watch. So things that seem to move crossly or badly to the godly, yet by the wonderful providence of God work for their good. Isn't that a great metaphor or illustration of God working all things together for our good? Let me embellish his illustration of a watch. I remember when I was a young boy, I had a couple of watches, and I would take a screwdriver, a very small and fine screwdriver, and many of you have done this as well, and you'd pop off the back of the watch. And what you would see is many, 100 components, arms and wheels and springs and all kinds of large and small and intricate. Some you can see, some you can't see. And sometimes you would see wheels moving this way. But then right next to it, there'd be a wheel moving this way. And that would be connected to a wheel that would be this big and moving slowly. And this one would have a smaller wheel. And then there would be arms uh, moving all about according to these wheels. But it was interesting that some of the wheels would go this way, some would go this way. Some of them were very quick and fast, some were large and small, and they had hands moving the various other parts of the inside of the watch. But when you turned it over, it was all working together to make the hand, the second hand, the hour hand, and the minute hand to work together in such a way as to be able to tell us what time it was on a particular day. That all those moving parts were working together, orchestrated by the components inside and the springs and such things that had to be adjusted. By the way, those watches had to be wound up every day. But winding it up was setting in motion a spring that set all these other components oddly going in different directions, but nonetheless, all of them working together to accomplish the good of allowing me to be able to tell what time it was during the day. I found that to be just a wonderful illustration of what's going on behind the scenes in all of a Christian's life. The Christian sees the hour hand, the minute hand, and the things that are going on in their life. But behind the scenes, like this watch, God is orchestrating all these things together in such a way as to work out to His glory, His honor, and to our good. It may not make sense to us, except the fact that we have to take by faith what's happening to us, and we have to, by faith, trust that God is behind the scenes, like this watch, orchestrating everything together, all the thousands and thousands of components that are taking place in our day-to-day lives every single day. God is orchestrating every single one of those. He promises for our good. And we need to believe that. And but I like the illustration because the internal workings of the watch just look very intricate, very complicated, and they are. But the watchmaker has constructed it in such a way that it serves a good purpose, that everything is working together intricately, second by second, moment by moment, to enable the front of the watch to carry out its purpose, and that is that we might be able to tell time. Well, God, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times more intricate than that and more providential than that, nonetheless is behind the scenes, beyond our sight, working all these thousands and thousands and thousands of things going on behind the scenes and sometimes in front of us. He's working them together for our good. Now, that doesn't mean that he's the cause of the evil things that happen to us, because he's not the cause. He cannot do evil, and he cannot tempt us with evil. But somehow behind the scenes, he's able, like a spring or a wheel, to work that together with all the other things that are going on in our lives to come at us in such a way as we can believe that it's for our good. It's for our good. I hope that that illustration from Thomas Watson from his book here is helpful to you. We can't see it. We can open up the back of a watch and we can see this extremely intricate and complicated matter take place, serving a good purpose, and that is so that we can tell time. But God is similarly, though much, much more wonderfully and more complex and more numerously using all kinds of things, but all for the same purpose of working together in an orchestrated way for the good of the Christian who is called by God and loved by God. I hope that's helpful to you. It's been very helpful to me. Just an illustration or a metaphor used by Thomas Watson, but helping us to understand that if a watchmaker can put together 150 pieces in such an orchestrated way to work out for our good, being able to tell time, well, God is bigger and greater and more wonderful than that, and he promises, like a watchmaker, he is orchestrating everything together for our good, even the hard and the difficult and the painful and even the abusive and the traumatic things that happen to us. I hope that's helpful to you. If it is, please push the like button. If you'd like to subscribe to this channel so that you can get future videos, you just need to push that subscribe button. And lastly, and very importantly, if you found this particular video to be helpful to you as you look back on some of life's painful and difficult situations, but now you can understand how God can work so intricately behind the scenes for your good. And if this leads you and brings you closer to God, and you can give thanks now to God, who is behind the scenes working for your good, well, I would like to invite you to share this video with other people as well. Okay, thanks for being with me today.